Hello everyone. In our today's topic, we will going to understand why protests are happening across the European countries against NATO and the other European allies. The flurry of protests broken out since the European countries are going through the acute energy crisis and the food crisis due to the severe drought. The energy and the food crisis are affecting the European standard of living very badly. And they are all happening since the Russia special military operation against Ukraine began. Not only this event, there are so many other events are affecting the energy security of Europe. Recently, United States and Poland destroying the Russia's Nord Stream 1 and the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that is coming through the Baltic Sea. They are the main culprit of sabotaging these two pipelines. After sabotaging these two pipelines, Poland, Norway, Denmark opened their own pipeline through the Baltic Sea, which is a very small project in comparison of Nord Stream 1 and 2, because this pipeline is capable of delivering only 5 million cubic meter of gas. In comparison, Nord Stream 1 alone is capable of delivering 120 million cubic meter of gas. So we are observing the truth, which is very transparent in front of us, that the US is the main culprit of sabotaging the Russian infrastructure on the European soil. And I am very certain about the US involvement of sabotaging the Russian pipeline through the Baltic Sea, because the former minister of Poland and now the European Union lawmaker, the Rodolf Sikorski, tweeted after the Nord Stream leak. And on this tweet he said, "Thank you America." So clearly Poland and the United States are trying to maneuver the European fate by destroying the Russian infrastructure in the Europe. The European countries are also responsible of destroying the Russian pride in Crimean Peninsula, the Kerch Bridge. The Russia has also accused Ukraine of trying to sabotaging the Turk Stream pipeline, the pipeline that goes from Russia to Turkey under the Black Sea. After the Kerch Bridge destruction by the Ukrainian special forces, Russia launched the massive attack against the Ukrainian territory. The Russia decimated energy and the water supply infrastructure of Ukraine by firing 80 missiles to it. Because of that, Ukraine will not be able to generate enough electricity for Europe. They will be unable to supply their surplus electricity to the European nations. So this is a double whammy for the Europe and the nation those who are heavily depends on the Russian and the Ukrainian energy supply. Because of that, the Europe is moving towards the Middle East and the North European nation Norway. And they are taking the advantage of the European situation, especially the Norway. They are exploiting these situations to earn the more money by creating the artificial crisis. Because most of the Western European nations are depends on the Norwegian gas and oil. This is the Norwegian hypocrisy. Because the Norway call itself a champion of human rights and the environmental rights. But they are taking advantage of situations where the human rights have been devastated and the decisions of the pumping more oil and gas will going to affect the environment very badly. So we are witnessing the scenarios in our today's time. And these scenarios are leading to the far more aggressive protest against the NATO and the respective European governments. Tens of thousands of European workers marched to the Brussels protesting the rising living cost, NATO's war in Ukraine and against the Russian policies. These demonstrators condemn the US-led NATO alliance and its involvement in the Ukrainian war. Many of these protesters also condemn the EU's sanction against Russian regime and the NATO's rush of arms to the Ukraine. The same level of protest were also happening in the Prague, the capital city of Czech Republic. They are asking their government not to invest the money in the Ukrainian war. The protesters were wanting their government to hike the salary and subsidize the energy supply instead of sending the money to the Ukraine. Because of the rising energy cost, the opposition party of Czech Republic came up with the no confidence motion in the parliament. But the ruling party won the no confidence vote swiftly. Although the rising energy price was the topic of discussion during the no confidence vote, the coalition survived the voting but faced the anger of protesters. The energy crisis can create a political crisis in the Europe's vulnerable economies. Not only these smaller European countries, the major economical powerhouses are also facing the fire of the protest. The similar scenes occur in the countries such as Germany. The supporters of the far-right alternative of German Democratic Party gathered in front of the Berlin's Reichstag building on Saturday to protest the rising prices of the livelihood. The protesters accused NATO of warmongering and the economic disruption that the EU imposed on the Russia over the Russia-Ukraine crisis. In France, a massive crowd of protesters marched through the Paris on Saturday demanding that the France radically changed its stance on NATO and the European Union. The protester came amid a strike by the union workers at the France petroleum refineries. These workers were asking for pay hike from Exxon and the Total Energy. These workers initially called for a 3-day strike, but it is on the 15th day now. Still no call from these organizations. Call to hike the salary is impossible for this organization because the French refineries are out of oil now in their reserve. Because the France already had the dispute with the Germany and the Spain regarding a pipeline. Although the France only consume 15% of the Russian energy, 60% of its petroleum pumps are out of gas now. The long queue of the cars standing idle outside of the petrol pumps due to the lack of energy supply. Because of that, the march was organized by the Les Patriots party, led by the Florian Philippot. He was the former deputy head of the Marine Le Pen's national rally. The rally attracted thousands of people, according to the Philippot, who was the member of the European Parliament between 2014 and 2019. The demonstrators were holding a large banner, reading the resistance and the smaller placard that called the Frexit, that is similar to the Brexit. The Frexit simply referred to the France departure from the European Union, the way the United Kingdom get out of the European Union. The crowd was also holding the Let's Get Out of the NATO. But this protest was not covered by the French national media. The protest was totally ignored by the media houses, except some of the international media houses covered that protest. International media houses means the Russians, Chinese, Iranian and some of the Turkish media news channels have covered it. But here I have a question. Why protesters are asking French government to get out of NATO? Has France ever get out of NATO? Yes. France get out of NATO in 1966 during the presidency of Charles de Gaulle. They get out of NATO because of the differences with some NATO policies that was created by the US itself. But this exit has been whitewashed by the NATO when you visit the NATO website. They outrightly denied this claim that the France ever take a exit out of NATO. Although after 1966 exit, France again rejoined the organization in 2009. Anyway, the energy crisis is pretty serious for the European nations. The Norway, being the only nations of the Europe, cannot take care of the European crisis or the European energy crisis alone, because the proper infrastructure is not there to supply the gas and the oil across the Europe from the Norway. Yesterday, Poland sabotaged the Druzhban oil pipeline. They again created an artificial leak by showing as a natural malfunction in the pipeline. If this is the way Europe wants to follow during the winter, then the Europe will be freeze to death. If Europe will follow the US policy blindly without questioning the intention of the US policy, then Europe will turn into a pariah state for Moscow. And they will going to destroy their own economy, being a faithful slave to the United States. The US is actually taking the advantage of Russia-Ukraine war by disrupting the global energy supply chain. They are earning billions by making allies vulnerable to the acute inflation. The US is also facing all-time high gas price domestically. The UK, the most faithful American ally, facing the risk of recession after the dwindling world economy. So Europe has to decide which way they want to go. Are they ready to follow the US dedicatedly? Or they want to evaluate their own individual position without influenced by the American policy? It is up to them. Now our today's questions. The first question is, which union ministry is associated with one nation, one grid, one frequency and one national load dispatch center? The first option is Ministry of Communication. Second option is Ministry of Electronics and IT. Third option is Ministry of Power. Fourth option is Ministry of Science and Technology. The second question is, the evidence of trapping zone has been discovered in which country? The first option is Maldives. Second option is Australia. Third option is Japan. Fourth option is Italy. So this is the end of the topic. If you have any questions or any other kinds of inquiry, then please mail me to my email address, which is tuhin.power.academy@gmail.com. I hope you will going to find my topic informative. Thank you very much. Thank you for your support.